A coiled serpent devouring its own tail stares back from an ancient page. This is the Ouroboros, one of the most famous alchemical drawings, and it holds a secret far greater than a recipe for gold. For centuries, alchemists used these intricate images as a coded language, hiding profound spiritual and philosophical truths in plain sight. By the end of this journey, you will be able to look at these mysterious drawings and understand the hidden map for inner transformation they represent. We will uncover why a king and queen must die in a flask and what a magnificent peacock's tail has to do with the human soul. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you see a symbol you cannot explain? That serpent eating its own tail represents a cycle of endless transformation, a core principle of the art itself. Alchemy was far more than a misguided attempt to create wealth. It was a complete philosophical system, a unique fusion of early science and deep spirituality. In their laboratories, alchemists performed real experiments with furnaces, flasks, and strange substances, their work laying the groundwork for modern chemistry. They truly believed they could transmute a common metal like lead into the perfect, incorruptible metal, gold. But this was only the surface goal, the exoteric work everyone could see. The true, hidden purpose of alchemy was esoteric. The alchemist believed that the chaotic, base metal was a mirror of the chaotic, unrefined human soul. The meticulous process of heating, dissolving, and purifying the material in their flasks was a direct parallel to the inner work of purifying the self. Each stage in the laboratory was a symbol for a stage of spiritual development. The goal was not just to make physical gold, but to create the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance believed to grant immortality and ultimate wisdom. This stone was understood not merely as a physical object, but as a metaphor for the perfected human spirit, the final product of a lifetime of inner transformation. So when an alchemist drew a king and queen in a flask, they were not depicting real people. They were mapping the journey of the soul. This reliance on symbols was not born from a simple love of art, but from a profound and necessary secrecy. The transformative truths of alchemy were dangerous. A church that preached a fixed path to salvation and a state that demanded absolute loyalty could not tolerate a philosophy that spoke of individuals perfecting themselves through a personal inner science. To openly write about dissolving the base self to reveal a divine spark within was to risk accusations of heresy, imprisonment, or worse. The coded language of drawings was their shield. A drawing of a dragon could be dismissed as a fanciful illustration, while to an initiate it clearly represented the chaotic, primal matter that had to be slain and conquered at the start of the great work. This secrecy also served a deeper, more philosophical purpose. Alchemists believed that true knowledge was not something to be given, but something to be earned through dedicated effort and personal revelation. They felt that profound spiritual truths could not be fully captured by the limitations of everyday language. Words could describe, but symbols could evoke. How do you accurately describe the feeling of a spiritual awakening, the moment of inner clarity, or the sensation of the soul being purified? You cannot. But you can depict a king representing the conscious mind and a queen symbolizing the unconscious soul being united in a bath. You can show that union dissolving in an alchemical wedding, a powerful image that conveys a loss of ego and the merging of opposites far more effectively than a paragraph ever could. This visual language created a barrier, a test of worthiness. If a person looked at an intricate engraving of a lion eating the sun and saw only a strange beast, they were not ready for the knowledge it protected. But if someone gazed upon that same image and sensed a deeper meaning, if they felt a pull to understand the relationship between the raw animal nature, the lion, and the brilliant light of consciousness, the sun, then the journey could begin. The symbols themselves acted as a filter, ensuring that the mysteries of alchemy would only reveal themselves to those with the patience, intuition, and dedication to truly seek them. The drawings were not just a hiding place, they were the first and most important lesson. This very act of self-devouring holds the first key to reading the alchemical map. The Ouroboros, the serpent forever consuming its own tail, is a perfect circle of perpetual motion. It is the ultimate symbol of a process with no true beginning and no final end, only constant cyclical renewal. It represents the fundamental truth that everything in existence operates in cycles, from the rising and setting of the sun to the death of a star that gives birth to new planets, and even to the patterns of our own lives, where every ending inevitably seeds a new beginning. But its meaning runs even deeper than the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The Ouroboros embodies the profound alchemical principle of one is all. The serpent is a single, continuous being, and yet it contains the entire process of creation and destruction within its own form. It is the origin and the destination, the devourer and the devoured all at once. It teaches that everything in the universe is interconnected, a unified whole. The stone you hold in your hand, the air you breathe, and the thoughts in your mind are all part of the same endless, self-sustaining circle. This powerful symbol did not originate with the alchemists of medieval Europe. Its coiled form was known to the ancient Egyptians as a representation of the sun god Ra and the cyclical journey of the sun disk through the sky and the underworld each day. The ancient Greeks adopted it, with philosophers like Plato describing a self-eating, circular being as the first living thing in the universe, a perfect, self-sufficient entity. When the alchemists inherited this ancient symbol, they saw in it the perfect summary of their entire art. The great work of transforming lead into gold was not a linear path, but a circular journey of breaking down and rebuilding, of death and resurrection, all contained within the single, sealed vessel of the alchemist's own being. The serpent consuming itself asks a silent, powerful question of anyone who sees it. If everything is one and you are part of that one, where does your own transformation truly begin and end? This endless cycle of self-consumption provides the very blueprint for the alchemist's ultimate goal, the magnum opus or great work. The Ouroboros perfectly visualizes the two most critical and paradoxical stages of this spiritual recipe: dissolution and coagulation. Dissolution, known as the nigredo, is the first and most frightening step. It is the dark night of the soul, represented by the serpent's head devouring its own body. In the laboratory, this meant taking the raw prima materia, the base substance of the work, and subjecting it to intense heat or powerful solvents, breaking it down into a black, formless chaos. This was not a gentle process. It was a symbolic death, the necessary destruction of the old, impure self. The alchemist had to witness their carefully prepared material dissolve into a uniform, blackened mass, a state of putrefaction that mirrored the despair and confusion one feels when their ego and long-held identity begin to crumble. It is the moment the king and queen in their flask are stripped of their crowns and robes, their distinct forms lost in a dark solution. Yet this state of blackness is not the end. It is the essential precursor to purification. From this chaotic, undifferentiated state, the process of coagulation begins. This is the albedo, the whitening, where the pure is separated from the impure. Just as the serpent's body is endlessly regenerated from the act of its own consumption, a new, purified substance begins to crystallize from the blackened solution. The fragmented pieces of the self, having been utterly dissolved, now begin to reassemble in a new, more perfect order. Imagine a stained glass window shattered into 1,000 pieces. Dissolution is the smashing. Coagulation is not simply gluing the old pieces back together, but melting them down so that the impurities rise to the surface and are skimmed away, allowing the pure, brilliant colors to reform into a window more radiant and transparent than before. This cycle of breaking down and building up, symbolized by the Ouroboros, was not a one-time event. An alchemist would repeat these operations over and over, each cycle refining the material further, each dissolution a little less terrifying, each coagulation a little more brilliant, drawing them closer to the ultimate prize, the Philosopher's Stone. The serpent does not just eat its tail, it creates a newer, stronger tail with every bite. This black and white dance of dissolution and coagulation sets the stage for the two most important performers in the alchemical drama. From the chaotic prima materia, two opposing principles must first be separated and defined. These are the sun and the moon, known to alchemists as Sol and Luna. They are not the celestial bodies in the sky, but powerful symbols for the fundamental, dualistic forces that exist within all things, from a lump of metal to the human psyche. Sol represents the masculine principle. It is the sun, gold, the king. Its energy is active, hot, and dry. It is the force of consciousness, of will, and of the spirit that seeks to act upon the world. Alchemists associated it with sulfur, not the common yellow powder, but a philosophical sulfur, a principle of combustibility and fixedness, the soul of matter. Luna embodies the feminine principle. It is the moon, silver, the queen. Her energy is receptive, cool, and moist. She represents the unconscious, the soul, the intuitive and fluid nature that receives and reflects. Her philosophical substance was mercury, seen not as a simple liquid metal, but as the universal spirit of all metals, the principle of volatility and transformation. In a person, Sol is your focused, daytime intellect, the part of you that makes plans and takes decisive action. Luna is your nighttime intuition, your dreams, your empathy, the deep well of creativity and emotion that you cannot always explain with logic. These two forces, in their raw state, are in constant conflict within us, a battle between head and heart, action and reflection. The alchemist's first great task was not to let one conquer the other, but to bring them into perfect, harmonious balance. This sacred union, the marriage of Sol and Luna, is called the chemical wedding. It is the essential first step where these powerful opposites are joined together in the sealed flask. Imagine trying to combine fire and water. At first, they simply fight, hissing and steaming as they cancel each other out. But with the precise application of heat and patience, a new state can be achieved, a stable, unified vapor that contains the properties of both. This is the goal of the conjunction. The king and queen are not merely placed side by side, they are dissolved together in a symbolic bath, their distinct identities merging to create a third, entirely new substance, the rebis or the double being. This is the hermaphroditic figure you often see in alchemical texts, a single body with both male and female attributes holding the sun and the moon. It is a powerful image of inner wholeness, the moment the warring parts of the self call a truce and agree to work as one. Without this sacred marriage of opposites, the great work of transformation could not even begin. This sacred union, the chemical wedding, is far more than a simple partnership. It is a complete annihilation of the old self. The king, Sol, and the queen, Luna, do not just get married. They are stripped of their royal garments and plunged into a bath where their very bodies dissolve, their identities merging into a single, indistinguishable liquid. This represents the most difficult psychological stage of the great work, the surrender of the conscious ego, the part of you that thinks it is in control, to the deeper, intuitive wisdom of the unconscious soul. It is a voluntary death of the personality as you know it. Think of a time when a long-held belief about yourself was suddenly shattered, or when a powerful emotion overwhelmed your rational mind. In that moment of internal chaos, your Sol and your Luna were at war. The chemical wedding is the conscious decision to stop fighting, to allow that chaos to happen, and to trust that a new, more complete you will emerge from the other side. The product of this profound union is the rebis, the divine hermaphrodite. This is not a literal two-headed creature, but a powerful symbol of inner wholeness and perfected balance. The rebis is often depicted as a single figure with both male and female characteristics, holding the sun in one hand and the moon in the other. It is the living embodiment of the maxim as above, so below. The internal world of the spirit and the external world of matter are now in perfect, harmonious alignment. Within this being, logic and intuition no longer argue, they converse. Action and reflection support one another. The volatile, mercurial soul and the fixed, sulphurous spirit have become one inseparable substance. This is the true goal of the alchemist's personal transformation, to become a fully integrated human being. The creation of the Ouroboros is not the end of the journey, but the moment the alchemist finally possesses the proper, balanced instrument, the philosopher's stone within themselves, to complete the great work. How would your decisions change if your head and your heart were always in perfect agreement? This two-headed, single-bodied being, the Ouroboros, is the ultimate prize of the inner wedding. It is the living proof that the war within has ended, not in a victory for one side, but in a profound and lasting peace treaty. The two heads are not in conflict, they are in constant communication, one gazing at the sun of conscious thought, the other at the moon of intuitive wisdom. They share a single heart, a single body, symbolizing that all actions now spring from a unified center. This is the state of a person who no longer struggles against themselves. Their decisions are not torn between logic and feeling, because their logic is informed by empathy and their feelings are illuminated by understanding. This is the alchemist's true self, the reborn individual who has integrated every fractured part of their being. The Ouroboros holds the tools of its own creation, the sun and moon, showing it has mastered the very forces that once caused it such turmoil. It stands upon a dragon, representing the conquered chaos of the primal self, now a stable foundation for a new way of being. To achieve this state was to forge the philosopher's stone within the vessel of your own soul. This stone was not a physical rock you could hold, but a permanent, crystalline state of consciousness, an unshakable awareness of your own wholeness. A person who has achieved this does not become a god, but a fully actualized human, capable of acting in the world with a clarity and purpose that seems almost superhuman to those still at war with themselves. Their base leaden nature has been permanently transmuted into spiritual gold. How different would your life be if you were no longer your own greatest obstacle? This state of inner wholeness reflects a universe built on the same principles of harmony. The Ouroboros, holding the sun and moon, is a mirror of a grand cosmic order where every human soul is intimately linked to the planets and stars. Alchemists saw the entire universe as a single, living entity, a macrocosm whose patterns were perfectly reflected in the small world of the human being, the microcosm. This ancient idea, as above, so below, meant that the same forces governing the cosmos also operated within each person. To map this connection, they created a precise symbolic language linking the 7 classical planets known to the ancients with the 7 base metals they worked with in their laboratories. Each planet was not just a distant light in the sky, but a living archetype, a specific flavor of divine energy. And each metal was its earthly, material counterpart, a dense, physical manifestation of that celestial force. The brilliant, life-giving sun was paired with the incorruptible, perfect metal, gold. Just as the sun rules the day with unwavering light, gold represented the ultimate goal of the spirit, a state of permanent, enlightened consciousness. The reflective, changing moon was connected to the soft, luminous metal, silver. The moon's receptive light and shifting phases mirrored the nature of the soul, the intuitive mind that reflects the light of higher awareness. The swift, unpredictable planet Mercury was embodied by the liquid, elusive metal quicksilver. This was Mercury, a substance that defied simple categorization, simultaneously a metal and a fluid, perfectly capturing the mercurial spirit of communication, transformation, and the bridging of opposites. The beautiful, radiant planet Venus was linked to the warm, reddish metal copper. Venus governed love, beauty, and artistic creation, and copper, which turns a beautiful green with age and is used in artistry, was its tangible form. The aggressive red planet Mars found its metal in hard, strong iron. Mars was the warrior, the energy of action, conflict, and raw will, and iron was the metal of swords and tools used to impose that will upon the world. The expansive, benevolent planet Jupiter was paired with the soft, malleable metal, tin. Jupiter was the king of the gods, representing growth, abundance, and higher wisdom, and tin, a metal used to make alloys like bronze that expand the uses of copper, reflected this generous, expansive nature. Finally, the slow, distant, and stern planet Saturn was connected to the heavy, dull, and base metal lead. Saturn represented time, limitation, structure, and death. Lead, the heaviest and least precious of the common metals, was the raw, primal state of matter, the weight of the unawakened self that must be transformed. This was not a random assignment, it was a complete map of reality. An alchemist looking at a lump of lead in their flask saw not just a metal, but the dense, melancholic energy of Saturn itself. They believed that by applying the correct celestial influences through precise processes that mirrored cosmic events, they could persuade the Saturnine nature of the lead to release its limitations and remember its true solar nature as gold. This meant the entire laboratory was a theater for cosmic forces, and the alchemist was an astronomer of the soul, aligning their inner planets to achieve a state of heavenly harmony. The ultimate expression of this cosmic harmony is the Philosopher's Stone itself. This legendary object was far more than a magical red powder for making gold. It was the crowning symbol of the entire alchemical journey, a multifaceted emblem of the highest state a human could achieve. The stone represented the final, perfect balance of all the forces we have explored, a state of enlightenment so complete it was often described as a form of immortality. This was not necessarily living forever in a physical body, but achieving an eternal quality of being, a consciousness so unified and radiant that it transcended the fear of death. The stone was the fully realized self, the permanent crystallization of that inner gold forged through countless cycles of dissolution and coagulation. Imagine a mind that has purified all its chaotic thoughts, a heart that has harmonized all its conflicting emotions, and a will that acts in perfect alignment with both. That unshakable, luminous state of existence is the true Philosopher's Stone. It is the end point of the map, the treasure hidden in the drawings all along. How do you depict such an abstract, profound achievement? The alchemists used one of their most beautiful and perplexing symbols, the peacock's tail. At a certain stage in the laboratory work, just as the blackness of the Negrido began to lift, the substance in the flask would sometimes shimmer with a spectacular array of iridescent colors. This phenomenon, a chemical reaction creating an oily film on the surface, was immediately seized upon as a powerful spiritual metaphor. They called it the cauda pavonis, the peacock's tail. This brilliant display was not the stone itself, but a glorious sign that the stone was near. It represented the moment just before enlightenment, when all the myriad aspects of the self, having been broken down and purified, begin to show their true divine colors. Every hue of the spectrum suddenly appears, each representing a different virtue, a different facet of wisdom, or a different reconciled opposite. The deep blue of intuition might shine beside the fiery red of passion, now purified into unwavering dedication. The vibrant green of growth would gleam next to the golden yellow of intellectual clarity. The peacock's tail was a vision of the soul's potential in its final, glorious stage of integration, a promise that all the struggle was about to coalesce into a single, perfect, and radiant point, the Philosopher's Stone itself. But this glorious peacock's tail, for all its beauty, is still not the final form. The journey from base matter to the perfected stone is often framed as a battle between two powerful beasts. In the shadows of the alchemical menagerie, two lions stand as opposing bookends of the great work. The first is the green lion. This is not a gentle creature of the forest. It is a ferocious primal force, often shown devouring the sun itself. The green lion represents the raw, unrefined prima materia at the very beginning of the work. It is chaos in its purest form, the volatile, acidic, and potent substance that must be tamed. Alchemists associated it with vitriol, a powerful sulfuric acid that could dissolve almost anything. This green lion is the unawakened soul, all of our raw passions, uncontrolled emotions, and primal instincts. It is the part of us that acts without thinking, that is consumed by jealousy, anger, or desire. Its color, green, is the hue of vigorous, unchecked life and growth, but also of poison and corrosion. To engage with the green lion is a dangerous undertaking. You cannot reason with it, and you cannot defeat it with force, for it is a part of you. The alchemist's first task is to confront this beast, to capture its incredible energy without being destroyed by it. This is the necessary starting point, for without this raw, chaotic power, there is no fuel for the transformation to come. What part of your own nature feels too wild, too unpredictable to ever be useful? The green lion is that very part waiting to be understood and harnessed. Through the long and careful processes of the work, this savage green beast is gradually subdued, purified, and transformed. Its chaotic energy is refined, its corrosive nature neutralized, and from this prolonged ordeal emerges its ultimate counterpart, the red lion. This magnificent creature is the polar opposite of the first. It is the philosopher's stone in one of its most potent symbolic forms. The red lion represents the final, perfected substance, the ultimate agent of transformation. Its color, red, is the color of the perfected sulfur, of cinnabar, of vital blood and perfected life force. Where the green lion was corrosive vitriol, the red lion is the elixir of life. It is the fully integrated will, a power so concentrated and aligned that it can transmute anything it touches, both in the laboratory and in the soul. If you have forged the red lion within yourself, your once chaotic passions have become a source of unwavering dedication. Your volatile emotions have become a deep, empathetic understanding. The very energy that once threatened to destroy you is now the fuel for your greatest actions. The lion that once devoured the sun now wears its radiant power as its own majestic mane. This is the ultimate promise of the alchemical path, that our greatest weaknesses, when faced with courage and patience, can become the source of our greatest strength. This confrontation with the lion is only the beginning of a much older and more dangerous struggle. Scrolling through these ancient texts, you will find the same formidable creatures appearing again and again, coiled around flasks or locked in battle with winged figures. The dragon and the serpent are the most ancient and potent symbols of the prima materia, the raw, chaotic foundation of the world that the alchemist must face. They are not monsters to be slain in the traditional sense, but representations of the untamed primal energy that exists both in the cosmos and deep within the human psyche. This is the energy of pure potential, but it is a chaotic, volatile, and often terrifying potential. The dragon, with its scales and fiery breath, embodies the fixed, resistant aspects of this chaos. It is the hardened habits, the stubborn prejudices, and the deeply ingrained fears that feel as impenetrable as dragon hide. The serpent, often winged, represents the volatile, mercurial side of this same force. It is the slippery nature of our own thoughts, the sudden surges of emotion that seem to have a mind of their own, the quick and cunning self-deceptions that poison our intentions. To undertake the great work, the alchemist had to first descend into their own personal underworld and confront this dragon serpent, a symbolic act of facing one's own shadow. This shadow is not merely your minor flaws, but the entire unconscious part of your being, a reservoir of repressed instincts, forgotten traumas, and raw creative power you have never learned to harness. It is everything about yourself you have been taught to ignore or suppress. The alchemist understood that this inner dragon was not an enemy to be destroyed, for it held the very fire needed for transformation. The goal was not a heroic victory, but a difficult, dangerous integration. You cannot make gold without first mastering the chaotic substance of lead. You cannot achieve enlightenment without first making peace with the darkness within. How do you begin to confront a beast that is, in essence, a part of your own soul? The laboratory process gave them a map for this inner battle. The first step was to slay the dragon, not with a sword, but with heat and patience. In the flask, this meant subjecting the prima materia to a sustained, controlled fire. The dragon's chaotic form was killed, dissolving into the black, uniform mass of the Negrido. Psychologically, this is the painful but necessary process of bringing the contents of the shadow into the light of conscious awareness. It is the act of honestly acknowledging your jealousy, your rage, your pride, or your laziness, not to judge it, but to simply see it for what it is. This is the slaying of the dragon, the moment you stop pretending the shadow does not exist and instead choose to face it directly. But the work does not end with the dragon's death. The serpent, the volatile spirit, must then be captured and fixed. In the laboratory, mercury was notoriously difficult to work with. It would evaporate with heat, escaping from the flask if the vessel was not perfectly sealed. The alchemist had to learn to contain this quicksilver, to fix it so it would not flee. This is the inner work of fixing the volatile spirit of your own mind. It is the practice of calming your anxieties, focusing your scattered thoughts, and taming the restless, mercurial energy that prevents you from achieving any lasting state of peace or purpose. When the dragon is slain and the serpent is fixed, their incredible power is no longer a threat. The dragon's fiery breath becomes the steady, transformative heat of the furnace. The serpent's mercurial speed becomes the agile, penetrating intelligence that can understand complex truths. The very forces that once ruled you through fear and chaos become the loyal servants of your higher purpose. This is the ultimate secret of the dragon and the serpent. They are the guardians of the treasure, and the treasure itself is their harnessed power. Yet from the blackness of the slain dragon, a miracle of color begins to bloom. The peacock's tail, or cauda pavonis, is one of the most breathtaking moments in the entire alchemical process. After the long, dark stage of putrefaction, where everything has been dissolved into a uniform black mass, the substance in the flask suddenly shimmers with a radiant, iridescent sheen. It is a sudden explosion of every color in the spectrum, an oily, rainbow-like film that dances across the surface. In the laboratory, this was often a real chemical phenomenon, perhaps a thin layer of oxide or sulfide forming and refracting light. But for the alchemist, it was so much more than a pretty effect. It was a profound spiritual signpost, a brilliant promise that the long night of the soul was finally ending. The stark unity of the black Negrido was now giving way to a glorious and complex diversity. This was not a return to the original, chaotic diversity of the unrefined self. That was a messy jumble of conflicting traits. The peacock's tail represents a new diversity, one born from purification. Imagine a single beam of pure white light passing through a prism and fracturing into the full, brilliant colors of the rainbow. The white light has not been corrupted, it has been revealed in all its magnificent potential. In the same way, the pure, unified consciousness achieved after the dissolution of the ego now begins to show its infinite facets. Every virtue, every talent, every aspect of wisdom that was once hidden or distorted by the personality now shines forth in its true color. The deep violet of spiritual insight might appear beside the clear blue of truthful communication. The vibrant green of healing compassion gleams next to the fiery orange of creative passion, now purified of selfish desire. This is the soul displaying the full range of its divine potential, a promise that the final, unified state of the philosopher's stone will not be a bland uniformity, but a diamond-like consciousness that reflects light in 1,000 different ways. The peacock's tail is the universe's way of whispering that you are on the right path, that all the struggle was worth it, and that something truly beautiful is about to be born. These two sovereigns, the king and queen, are the central characters in the alchemical story of the self. The king, robed in crimson and gold, represents sulfur, the principle of all that is fixed and permanent within you. He is your conscious will, your enduring identity, the part of you that says I am. He is the soul, the stable core that provides structure and purpose. The queen, cloaked in silver and crowned with the moon, embodies Mercury, the principle of all that is fluid and changing. She is your boundless spirit, your intuition, your dreams and emotions that flow like quicksilver. She is the unconscious mind, the vast, mysterious inner ocean from which all creativity and insight emerge. In their initial, separated state, these two rulers often live in a quiet, internal conflict. Your king, the rational mind, tries to impose order and control, while your queen, the intuitive spirit, responds with unpredictable feelings and inspired chaos. This is the state of most people, a kingdom divided against itself. The goal of alchemy is not for one to rule the other, but for them to unite in a sacred partnership. This union, however, requires something shocking and profound. They must first die. The alchemical texts show the king and queen being stripped of their royal garments and plunged into a single flask, a hermetic bath where their distinct bodies dissolve. This is the symbolic death of the ego. The king's fixed sense of self must dissolve. The queen's volatile emotions must be stilled. Their individual identities, the very crowns they wear, are lost in a dark, uniform solution. It is a terrifying but necessary surrender. Think of a time when a deeply held belief about who you are was completely shattered. Perhaps you failed at something that defined you, or a relationship you built your identity around came to an end. In that moment of profound disorientation, your inner king and queen were undergoing this very dissolution. It feels like a death because it is one, the death of the person you thought you were. This is not a punishment, but the essential first step toward becoming someone more whole. From this shared dissolution, a purification occurs. The blackened solution in the flask, the product of their death, is then subjected to a gentle, sustained heat. The impurities, the dross of the old ego, rise to the surface and are skimmed away. What remains begins to clarify, turning from black to white in the stage known as the albedo. This is the purification of both spirit and soul. The king's rigid will is softened and made flexible. The queen's chaotic emotions are calmed and given focus. They are not being destroyed but refined, washed clean of the attachments and fears that kept them separate and at odds. Only after this death and purification can the true miracle happen, their resurrection. The purified essences of the king and queen rise from the bath no longer as two separate beings, but as a single, radiant entity, the rebis. This is the divine hermaphrodite, the embodiment of the united self. The king's conscious will now act in perfect harmony with the queen's intuitive wisdom. Your actions are no longer torn between logic and feeling, because your logic is compassionate and your feelings are insightful. This resurrected being is you, but are you reborn, having integrated the warring parts of your nature into a cohesive, powerful whole? The death of the king and queen was not an end, but the only possible beginning for a life of genuine peace and purpose. This sealed flask, this vase, was far more than simple glassware. It was the entire universe in miniature, a sacred, protected space where the impossible could occur. The alchemist's first and most crucial act was to create this perfect seal, a boundary separating the inner work from the chaotic influence of the outside world. Within this transparent womb, the base metals could be dissolved, the king and queen could die, and the dragon could be slain, all without contamination. The vessel had to be hermetically sealed, a term derived from Hermes Trismegistus, the mythical father of alchemy. This seal ensured that nothing could enter, and just as importantly, that nothing essential could escape. The volatile mercurial spirit, the very soul of the work, was notorious for flying away if given the slightest opening. Think of trying to meditate in a noisy, distracting room. Every passing car, every shouted conversation pulls your attention away from your inner focus. The sealed vessel is that quiet room for the soul. It represents the disciplined mind, the focused will that learns to shut out the distractions of the world, the criticisms of others, and the constant chatter of daily life to concentrate entirely on the inner transformation. The alchemists protected their physical laboratory, but they were also building an inner fortress of concentration. The vessel was their own body and mind, purified and dedicated to the great work, a sanctuary where the most delicate psychological operations could proceed in safety. How could any real change happen if you are constantly exposed to the very influences that keep you trapped in your old patterns? The flask provided the answer. It created the necessary isolation for the seed of the new self to germinate away from the harsh elements. Without this sacred, sealed space, the prima materia would remain chaotic, the chemical wedding would be interrupted, and the philosopher's stone could never form. The vessel was not just a container, it was the very condition for all transformation. This first stage of the great work is a descent into absolute blackness. The negrido, or blackening, is the alchemical term for putrefaction, the moment when the sealed vessel holds only a uniform, chaotic darkness. It is the putrefaction of the old self, a state of profound spiritual despair that the alchemist understood was not a sign of failure, but the essential starting point of all transformation. Imagine the total dissolution of the king and queen in their flask. Their royal identities have been utterly stripped away, leaving behind a formless, blackened mass. This is the state of the negrido. It is the dark night of the soul, a period of intense confusion, melancholy, and the feeling that everything you once believed about yourself has crumbled into meaningless dust. The alchemists did not run from this darkness. They actively sought it, knowing it was the necessary decomposition of the ego, the rotting away of the false personality so that the true self could eventually emerge. This is the confrontation with the shadow self, that hidden part of your being containing all the traits, desires, and fears you have repressed or denied. In the blackness of the negrido, the shadow rises to the surface. Feelings of envy you thought you had conquered, irrational angers, deep-seated insecurities, all bubble up from the depths of the unconscious. It feels like being psychologically unmade. Why would anyone willingly undergo such a painful process? The alchemists believed that just as a seed must rot in the dark soil before it can sprout, the soul must endure this blackening before any real growth can occur. The negrido is the fertile black earth from which the new, purified self will eventually grow. It is the state of maximum potential, precisely because all old structures have been broken down. Think of a time when a major life change, a loss, or a personal failure plunged you into a period of deep doubt and reevaluation. In that painful space where your old identity no longer fit, you were experiencing a taste of the negrido. It is the terrifying yet crucial first step on the map of transformation, the long, dark tunnel that must be traveled before any light can be seen. From the fertile darkness of the negrido, a new light begins to dawn. This is the albedo, the whitening, the stage of purification and clarity that follows the soul's long night. After the terrifying dissolution of the old self, the chaotic blackness within the alchemical vessel slowly starts to clear, turning a brilliant lunar white. This is not a return to the beginning, but the emergence of something entirely new and pure. The albedo represents the soul's first true wash, a cleansing of the psychological dross that rose to the surface during the putrefaction. Imagine the profound calm after a storm has passed, when the air feels fresh and the world seems still and clean. That is the feeling of the albedo. It is a state of peace and lucidity, where the internal conflicts that once felt so overwhelming have settled, and you can finally see yourself with a new, gentle honesty. This stage is often symbolized by a white queen or a graceful swan, figures of pristine purity and reflective wisdom. The white queen is the same lunar queen from the chemical wedding, but now she has been washed clean of her attachments and fears, rising from the dark bath with a serene and powerful clarity. The swan, gliding peacefully on a still lake, perfectly captures this state of calm reflection. Its white feathers symbolize the purified soul, and its movement on the water represents the conscious mind now able to navigate the depths of the unconscious without being pulled under. This is the beginning of genuine enlightenment, not as a blinding flash, but as a soft, steady, inner light that allows you to perceive the world and your own nature without the distortions of the ego. How would it feel to look upon your own past struggles not with shame, but with a quiet, understanding compassion? That is the gift of the albedo. This lunar white begins to glow with a soft, golden warmth, a stage the alchemists called citrinitas, the yellowing. While often overshadowed by the stark drama of the black night and the brilliant promise of the white dawn, this phase is the critical bridge between them. It represents the dawning of a new kind of awareness, a solar consciousness that illuminates the world from within. After the albedo's peaceful reflection, the soul does not remain a passive, moonlit mirror. The pure, silvery light of understanding now becomes active, transforming into a deep, personal wisdom. This is the wisdom of the heart, a knowing that feels as warm and certain as sunlight. It is the moment when the insights you gained in that state of calm clarity become integrated into your very being, coloring your every thought and action with a new golden hue. Imagine the first rays of the sun touching a landscape at dawn, turning the cold, blue-gray light of morning into a vibrant, living world of gold and amber. That is the shift from albedo to citrinitas. The White Queen, having been purified, now begins to radiate with the energy of the king, not as separate rulers, but as a unified golden light. This is not intellectual knowledge, but an embodied understanding. You do not just know that forgiveness is important, you feel a genuine, warm forgiveness toward those who have wronged you. You do not just understand the concept of courage, you find a steady, sun-like confidence rising within you to face your fears. The light you discovered in the albedo has now been internalized, becoming the very substance of your character. How does your life change when your deepest insights are no longer just thoughts, but the very light by which you see? That golden dawn finally ignites into a brilliant, unquenchable crimson. The final and most glorious stage of the great work is the rubedo, the reddening where the substance in the alchemist's vessel and the substance of their own soul transforms into a living, vibrant red. This is not merely a change in color, it is the ultimate transmutation, the physical and spiritual proof that the philosopher's stone has been achieved. The rubedo represents the complete and total integration of the self, a spiritual awakening so profound that it is often described as a fiery baptism. If the albedo was the cleansing by water, a lunar purification, then the rubedo is the forging by fire, a solar consummation. All the previous stages have been leading to this moment of ultimate unification. The purified white of the soul, the albedo, now permanently unites with the golden light of the spirit, the citrinitas, and their marriage gives birth to this radiant ruby red. It is the color of vital blood, of perfected life force, of a love and a consciousness that burns with an eternal flame. The once separate king and queen are now entirely fused, their union solidified into this incorruptible red stone. Think of a master craftsman who has practiced their art for decades. At first, their movements were clumsy and required conscious thought. Then, after years of practice, their skill became second nature, a fluid and effortless extension of their will. The rubedo is that state for the entire human being. Every virtue, every insight, every reconciled part of the self now operates not as a separate skill, but as a single, seamless, and automatic expression of a perfected nature. The stone is now complete. It is the fully realized self, a consciousness that has achieved a permanent state of enlightenment and acts as a powerful agent of transformation in the world. A person who has attained this inner rubedo does not hide away in a monastery. They walk among others, but their presence is different. Their very being has a calming, clarifying effect, much like the legendary Philosopher's Stone was said to be able to transmute base metals into gold by mere proximity. Their words carry a weight of deep truth, their actions are aligned with a higher purpose, and their compassion is both boundless and discerning. They have become a living embodiment of the maxim "as above, so below," their inner heavenly order radiating outward to bring a touch of harmony to the world around them. This is the true culmination of the great work, the moment the hidden map of the drawings is fully deciphered, and the alchemist discovers that the treasure they sought in their flasks was shining within them all along. This final crimson stone, a perfect fusion of spirit and soul, finds its ultimate geometric form in one of alchemy's most enduring puzzles. Etched into the margins of ancient manuscripts, you will find a circle perfectly containing a square, or a square holding a circle within its bounds. This is the squaring of the circle, a symbol that seems like a mathematical impossibility, yet it perfectly captures the highest ambition of the entire alchemical quest. The circle, with its endless, unbroken line, has always represented the spiritual realm. It is the heavens, the divine, the eternal cycle of the Ouroboros, and the boundless nature of the soul. It has no beginning and no end, symbolizing a reality that is infinite and perfect. The square, with its 4 equal sides and sharp angles, is its absolute opposite. It is the symbol of the material world, the 4 physical elements of earth, air, fire, and water, the 4 directions, and the solid, stable reality we can touch and measure. The square is the body, the earth, and the limitations of physical existence. For most of human experience, these 2 realms, the spiritual circle and the material square, are seen as separate, even in conflict. The spirit yearns for freedom and infinity, while the body is bound by gravity, decay, and the stubborn laws of the physical world. The alchemist's ultimate goal was not to escape the square for the circle, but to perform the miraculous act of squaring the circle itself to perfectly harmonize the 2. This meant bringing the infinite into the finite, grounding the divine in the everyday, and making the eternal tangible within the temporal. It is the final and most profound meaning of the Philosopher's Stone. The stone was not a spiritual idea to be contemplated, but a real, tangible substance that could be held in the hand, a physical proof that spirit had successfully been made manifest in matter. How would your life change if you could experience a sense of boundless peace, not just in meditation, but while stuck in traffic or doing the dishes? That is the practical magic of squaring the circle. It is the state where your highest spiritual insights are no longer separate from your daily actions. The person who has achieved this does not live with their head in the clouds, but walks firmly on the earth with a heart full of heaven. Their compassion is not an abstract feeling, but manifests as a concrete act of help for a neighbor. Their wisdom is not locked away in books, but comes out in a perfectly timed word of advice to a friend in need. The boundless love of the circle is expressed through the structured, practical kindness of the square. This symbol challenges the very idea that the spiritual and the material are enemies. It proposes instead that the ultimate purpose of our existence is to build a square so stable and pure that it can become a perfect home for the infinite circle, to create a life where every mundane action is infused with a sacred intention. The alchemist's laboratory was the training ground for this great work, a place where they practiced imposing the perfect spiritual order of the circle onto the chaotic base matter of the physical world, represented by the square. In the end, the squaring of the circle is an invitation to stop seeing yourself as a spirit trapped in a body, and to begin the glorious work of building a bridge between the 2 until the circle and the square become one and the same. This perfect union of circle and square is mirrored in the 3 fundamental forces that govern every stage of the transformation. The alchemists called these the tria prima, the 3 primes, and they are the essential philosophical ingredients for all of creation. These are not the common substances you can find on a shelf, but the hidden principles behind them. They are sulfur, mercury, and salt. Think of them as the 3 primary colors of reality itself, and every object, every person, and every thought is a unique mixture of these three. Philosophical sulfur is the principle of soul and consciousness. It is the masculine, active force, the energy of desire, will, and combustion. This is the fiery part of you that initiates action, that feels passion, that burns with ambition or anger. In a piece of wood, sulfur is the property that allows it to catch fire and burn. In a human being, it is the driving force of your personality, the part that says I want, I will, I am. Philosophical Mercury is the principle of spirit and life. It is the feminine, receptive force, the energy of intelligence, adaptability, and volatility. This is the fluid, connecting part of you that understands, that intuits, that communicates and flows between ideas. In a metal, Mercury is the property that makes it malleable and shiny. In a person, it is your quick wit, your empathy, your dreams, and your ability to change and learn. Then there is salt, the often overlooked third principle. Salt is the principle of the body and substance. It is the neutral force of fixity, crystallization, and matter. This is the stabilizing, grounding element that gives form and durability. It is the structure that holds the fiery sulfur and the fluid mercury together, preventing them from flying apart. In the world, salt is what gives a crystal its stable shape. In a person, it is your physical body, your habits, your routines, and the tangible results of your actions in the world. The great work of alchemy revolves entirely around the relationship between these three. Imagine a candle. The sulfur is the flame itself, bright, hot, and active, constantly consuming the wax. The mercury is the invisible, volatile vapor just above the wick that carries the fire upward. And the salt is the solid wax and the wick, the fixed body that provides the fuel and the structure for the entire process. Without the salt, the fire would have nothing to burn and would vanish in an instant. The alchemist's task was to understand and master the interplay of these three within their own being. A person dominated by sulfur is all passion and no patience, a raging fire that burns out quickly. A person dominated by mercury is all ideas and no action, a brilliant but formless mist. A person dominated by salt is all structure and no spirit, a stable but lifeless crystal. The goal was to bring them into a perfect dynamic balance where the soul's fire, the spirit's intelligence, and the body's stability work in complete harmony. How do your own desires, thoughts, and habits interact, and which of the three primes feels most dominant in your life right now? A raven descends into the alchemical flask, its black wings dissolving into the very darkness it represents. This bird is the unmissable herald of the Negrido, the stage of blackening and putrefaction. Its arrival signals that the difficult, necessary work of dissolution has truly begun. The raven does not symbolize evil or misfortune, but rather the fertile darkness where all transformation is seeded. It is the guardian of that shadowy threshold between the old self and the new, a creature that thrives in the realm of decay because it understands that death is the prerequisite for life. When the raven appears in a text, the alchemist knew they were entering the long, dark night of the soul, where the ego must be broken down into its raw components. This is not a passive state of despair, but an active engagement with the most hidden parts of the self. The raven pecks away at the corpse of the old identity, ensuring that nothing remains to contaminate the new growth to come. Have you ever had a moment of profound humility when you were forced to confront a flaw you had long ignored? In that uncomfortable clarity, the raven was your companion, guiding you into the necessary darkness. From the depth of that blackness, a figure of stunning purity emerges. The swan glides across a still, reflective lake, its brilliant white feathers a perfect symbol for the albedo, the whitening. This stage follows the raven's work, representing the soul's first true wash and the dawn of lucidity after the long internal night. The swan embodies peace, clarity, and a reflective wisdom. Its serene movement on the water mirrors the conscious mind now able to navigate the depths of the unconscious without being pulled under by chaotic emotions. Where the raven was about confrontation and breakdown, the swan is about purification and calm understanding. It is the moment you can look upon your own past struggles and failures not with shame or anger, but with a gentle, compassionate clarity. The swan does not struggle against the water, it moves with it, a lesson in accepting and reflecting upon what is. This beautiful bird teaches that enlightenment begins not with a shout, but with a quiet, steady inner light that allows you to see yourself and the world without the old distortions. Another bird offers a more startling lesson in love. The pelican is often depicted piercing its own breast to feed its young with its blood. In alchemy, this powerful image represents the virtue of self-sacrifice and the principle of circulation. The alchemist learned that the work required a constant process of giving back to itself, of nourishing the emerging new consciousness with the essence of the old. The pelican's sacrifice is not an act of hopeless martyrdom, but one of purposeful, regenerative love. In the laboratory, this could be seen when a substance was vaporized by heat, only to condense and fall back into the flask to nourish the process anew. Psychologically, this is the stage where you willingly offer up your own time, energy, and comfort to nurture a budding insight or a newfound virtue. It is the parent sacrificing for a child, the artist pouring their emotional life into their work, or the friend offering unwavering support. The pelican reminds us that true transformation demands that we feed the new self with the very substance of the old, that we are both the nourisher and the nourished in this sacred cycle. All these stages of darkness, clarity, and sacrifice converge in one legendary creature. The phoenix is the ultimate alchemical symbol, the glorious embodiment of the rubedo itself. This magnificent bird, after living a long life, builds its own funeral pyre and is consumed by flames only to rise anew from its own ashes, more vibrant and powerful than before. This is the complete and final transmutation. The phoenix represents the moment the inner fire of transformation becomes so intense that it burns away the last vestiges of the old self, allowing the perfected, golden red consciousness of the philosopher's stone to be born. Its death is not an end, but the ultimate act of purification and rebirth. The fiery blaze of the rubedo is the same flame that empowers the phoenix, a sacred fire that does not destroy but rather refines into a higher state of being. When you emerge from a period of immense difficulty with a renewed sense of strength and purpose, having let go of what no longer served you, you have touched the mystery of the phoenix. It is the final, glorious proof that the soul is not diminished by its trials, but is forged by them into something eternal and new. A garden grows in the heart of the laboratory, its roots tangled in the dark earth of the flask and its branches reaching for the ceiling. This is the philosophical tree, a living symbol that reminds us the great work is not a mechanical process but an organic growth. It draws its sustenance from the very substance it transforms, its roots deep in the prima materia, the raw matter of the self, while its branches stretch upward into the realm of spirit and consciousness. This tree teaches that enlightenment is not built like a brick wall, but cultivated like a rare and precious fruit. Its trunk is the steadfast will of the alchemist, the disciplined practice that supports the entire endeavor. The sap that rises through it is the mercurial spirit, the fluid intelligence that carries nourishment between the earth and the sky. Each stage of the alchemical process finds its parallel in the tree's life cycle. The blackening of the negrido is the seed rotting in the soil, the necessary death before the sprout can break through. The whitening of the albedo is the first pale shoot emerging into the light, pure and full of potential. The yellowing of the citronitas is the dappled sunlight filtering through the young leaves, and the reddening of the rubedo is the ripe, crimson fruit hanging heavy from the branches, ready to be harvested. This fruit is the wisdom of the philosopher's stone, the tangible result of a lifetime of patient cultivation. It is not a single piece of knowledge, but a living understanding that nourishes and transforms the one who partakes of it. How do you tend the garden of your own inner life, and what kind of fruit is it beginning to bear? Among the most breathtaking artifacts of this secret tradition are the illuminated manuscripts where the coded language of symbols unfolds in full, radiant color. The 16th century masterpiece known as the Splendor Solis, or Splendor of the Sun, is perhaps the most visually stunning alchemical text ever created. Its pages shimmer with intricate, jewel-toned illustrations set within ornate golden borders, looking more like a sacred religious text than a laboratory manual. Within these painted flasks, the entire cosmic drama of the great work plays out. You see the king and queen in their bath, the blackened sun of the Negrido, and the glorious peacock's tail, all rendered with the care and skill of a master artist. The visual narrative is not merely decorative, it is the primary text. The images guide the initiate through the stages of transformation, with each flask representing a different phase of the process, from the initial putrefaction to the final crimson stone. The sheer beauty of the Splendor Solis conveys a crucial, often overlooked message about alchemy. This was not a grubby, desperate search for wealth, but a sacred art, a spiritual pursuit that demanded the highest levels of discipline, aesthetic sensitivity, and reverence for the divine order reflected in nature. Its splendor was a reflection of the splendor the alchemists sought to uncover within their own soul. How different is this from the stark, wordless instructions of another famous text, the Mutus Liber, or Mute Book? Published in the 17th century, this mysterious work consists entirely of 15 elaborate engravings, completely devoid of any explanatory text. It is a purely pictorial guide to creating the Philosopher's Stone, a silent film of the great work. The engravings show a man and a woman representing the solar and lunar principles, performing a series of ritualized actions. They gather morning dew in sheets, a symbol for capturing the universal spirit, and they tend to their flasks with a patient, cyclical rhythm. The Mutus Liber suggests that the ultimate secrets cannot be spoken or written, only shown and enacted. The silence of the book is its final lesson, insisting that true knowledge is not found in another person's words, but through direct personal experience and observation of the natural world. It forces the seeker to rely on their own intuition, to interpret the visual symbols and connect them to the inner process of transformation. One book speaks through dazzling beauty, the other through profound silence, yet both point toward the same ineffable truth hidden within the alchemical drawings. These intricate drawings were never meant to be simple decoration. They are a profound map, a coded guide to the most challenging and rewarding journey any human can undertake, the transformation of the self. The quest to turn lead into gold was always a mirror, reflecting our own deep desire to transmute our base fears, our chaotic emotions, and our hidden weaknesses into a more resilient, golden state of being. It is the human quest for meaning and self-realization made visible. The next time you encounter a symbol you do not immediately understand, whether in an old piece of art, a dream, or even a modern logo, pause for a moment. Look past its surface, ask yourself what deeper process it might be pointing toward. Is it speaking of a necessary ending, a union of opposites, or a cycle of renewal in your own life? The language of symbols is a living one, and these ancient maps remind us that the great work of becoming who we are meant to be is always ongoing. We would love to hear what you see. Share a symbol that has resonated with you and your own interpretation in the comments below. The conversation, just like the work itself, is never truly finished.